everyone. Welcome to our money making series. What can my small business sell to the federal government? Sell direct to the Department of Energy. Today, we're going to profile the agency called Department of Energy. So before you can start selling anything to the Department of Energy, as I always say, you have to know what they buy. You can only know what they buy if you do your homework. And I've done a lot of that for you. So let's get started. So look at this. The Department of Energy spent $30.4 billion on all business contracts. That would be large companies, small disadvantaged companies. All of that was spent in 2017. And generally speaking, I want you to remember something. Every year, these agencies spend dollars on basically the same things. So you have a chance to, if you missed it last year, you can get it this year. You just need to make sure that you pay attention to the research and the behaviors and the buying patterns. That's primarily why I'm doing this. But the Department of Energy just in 2017 spent $30.4 billion on all federal contracts for small and large companies. So this is how the Department of Energy is structured. You have the Conservation Renewable Energy Department, Fossil Energy Department, Nuclear Energy, Energy Regulation, Energy Research, Office of Science, and then you have private companies that have prime contracts, but they're kind of acting like an arm to the Department of Energy. So Sandia Labs is an excellent example of that. Sandia Labs has to work with a lot of small businesses and do some of the things that the Department of Energy has hired them to do. And they are pretty active with making sure that small businesses get a nice sized piece of the pie when it comes to the Department of Energy. Sandia Labs has an obligation to do that because if they don't, they'll lose the contract. So when you see Sandia Labs and you know they're connected to the Department of Energy, it's because they are a branch of the Department of Energy, so to speak. They're doing the work that the Department of Energy cannot do themselves. And then there are other labs as well. They have a lot of contractors that are working this way, especially when it has to do with labs and research. So what are the top products or services for the Department of Energy? As you can see, $10 billion, $10.3 billion is spent on an area called Operation of Government R&D. Remember I just said to you they do a lot of work with the labs, a lot of private contracting. So a lot of the dollars spent are in that arena within that first line of operations of government R&D, go-go facilities. But there are a lot of dollars being spent under there, but a lot of that money is spread out to small businesses, to larger companies. It's all over the place. But if we wanted to know specifically what those dollars are being spent on, what would we do? We would run a research report so that we can see if we fall in that category. But as you go down the line, you see things like construction of the facilities, you see other management support services. What does that mean? Other management support services for $455 million. We could look that up and it would tell us exactly everything that was bought under other management support services. So I'm giving you the big picture, but it's very easy to narrow down what these categories mean. Some of them are obvious, but some of them are not. Engineering and technical services, we know what that is. Demolition of structures of facilities, we know what that is. Here's guard services again. Now, this is a completely different agency. The other guard services that I did was the Department of Justice, and they had a lot of guard services activity too. Guard services, security guard services could be a huge, huge um, opportunity for small businesses that already have a company like that or that are interested in creating a company that provides security and guard services. It's amazing. But the Department of Energy spent $183 million on guard services. And I told you in general, I did the report on those two profiled companies where when we looked at all small businesses as they relate to guard services, $104 billion was spent on guard services back in 2017. So if that's up your alley, take a look at that. And then also, let's look at what else. Electric services, of course, 43 million. We could check out, electric services to see what that means under the Department of Justice, but that's about $43 million. We also have training curriculum development. We don't know what type of training that is, but what if you're an energy specialist? What if you know a lot about energy? You can determine by running a report on training curriculum development under the Department of Energy to find out what kind of training are they doing? Could I have something to do with that? Could I provide something? But that's $23 million that was spent just under that category. Services basic research, $13 million. What is that? Personal services contracts. That's interesting. What is that? What does that mean? So the Department of Energy, we know they spent 30 billion last year with all businesses all over the country. But what about small businesses? Well, looks like they spent about $1.3 billion. That's not a lot out of 30 billion, but some of those could be under subcontracts. But to me, this is not a lot compared to what we could be getting out of $30 billion. Hopefully, those facilities and contractors that they've hired under that $10 billion category are doing more work with small businesses as well. But 2017 produced $1.3 billion for small businesses and small disadvantaged businesses under the Department of Energy. And some of this could also be because small businesses don't know a lot about Department of Energy. Maybe a lot of small businesses don't feel that they have a lot to offer, but that's the point of this. I do personally know some professionals. We have a few clients in the energy business that have high education and a lot of experience in the Department of Energy, or they work on research and development areas that impact the Department of Energy. So, it just has to be, in some cases, specialty, but not all cases. There are a lot of basic things that they have to buy as well. What about 2018? What's going on with 2018 already? Well, we're in the second quarter of 2018, and in the first quarter of 2018, it looks like $5.4 billion was already spent in 2018. And then we only have so far 8 million that was spent with small businesses or subcontracted businesses, I should say. But most of the time they're small. Remember, these government agencies have to make sure that they're spending a percentage of any money that is being put out there. A percentage of that money has to go to small businesses. But this is what it looks like in 2018 already. $5.4 billion spent. With small businesses in 2018 already, $181 million has been spent already. So small and disadvantaged businesses in the first quarter of 2018, Not too shabby, but it probably could be a lot better. We're already up to the billions with the larger companies, but we're barely in the 181 million in the smaller company arena and the small disadvantaged business arena. So what are they spending the money on already? Well, it's kind of the same story. This is why you need to get in the game. The game is consistent. So look at this. Operations of government R&D GOGO facilities, GOCO facilities at $1.9 billion already. That would be, the labs and all kinds of activities, but mostly research and development. So if you're into research and development or you want to narrow down what's included in this category, you have to do a little more digging and do a little more homework to figure it out. But if you look at all these categories, look at down here towards the bottom. Guard services is still one of the top services for the Department of Energy. We saw the same thing with guard services under the Department of Justice. I find that amazing. I think that's actually a very good thing. A guard services company is something that can, I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying that that is a company that can within reason be developed pretty quickly. And let's say you always wanted to start a guarding safety security guard company. I mean, this is incentive by itself, and it shows you that it's a huge consistent market, especially for small businesses. And then what about other management support services? That's 59 million. Who knows what that is? But we could look it up and find out if there's something that they need from a company like ours. Also, what about construction R&D GOCO facilities? $197 million. Dollars. If you own a construction company or an architectural engineering A&E firm, truly you could fit into this scenario of the top products or services that are being offered by the Department of Energy. This is very exciting. And we know $30 billion was spent last year. It's not going to get much less or be much less for 2018. It'll be very much the same. And again, you need to pay attention to the patterns and the activities when it comes to the buying activities and what's happening every single year, year after year. So this is the Department of Energy's website, and I'll have a link to the website in the comment section for you, but this is a link to the Department of Energy. And what am I looking for? I'm looking for a forecast report. I had to do a little bit of digging, but it's in here. I did find it. And this is what it looks like. The forecast report for the Department of Energy. So it looks just like it does for the Department of Justice, not that they all look the same. Some of them are going to be spreadsheets, some of them are going to be in a completely different system. But this is for the Department of Energy, and if you look in the first column, you will see the office, or what I should say, the department under the Department of Energy. If you notice, this has a lot of pages. I don't know if you can tell that, but it does. It has a lot of pages for each department under the Department of Energy. So you need to realize that you should look where it says program name, office, site, laboratory. That's just one section. This has probably 100 or more lines, which identifies in the first column, it identifies the department, and then it identifies the anticipated solicitation quarter. So it should be more detailed than this. I mean, we can't force them to do it the way we want them to, but I would think that it should have the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter of 2018, and it does not. Some of them, as you go down, may have more specifics, but the point is that you will have a federal buyer connected to each one of these opportunities. So you can actually email them and ask them, what quarter is the solicitation coming out? And then here's the column for solicitation numbers, but you don't see any in there. You can ask them, when is it coming out? When can I look for it? And is it still scheduled? Are you guys planning to put out this solicitation? You see in the next column the NAICS code for the solicitation, so you know what the code is going to be for that particular solicitation. Then next to that, you see the type of acquisition. And so the type of acquisition in this case on this first row is going to be a GSA schedule. That tells you how they're going to put the solicitation out. So for the record, in this one, you would need to have a GSA schedule in order to get this done, in order to bid on this. So if you don't have a GSA schedule, just bypass it and go to the other opportunities with similar NAICS codes. This is also not in order. You could literally sort this by NAICS code, just like you could with any other spreadsheet. But you have the type of acquisition, the acquisition vehicle they're going to use, in this case GSA schedule. Then they describe the solicitation or the service or the product under acquisition description. Then they tell you the name of the incumbent. Remember what the incumbent is. What is the incumbent? That is the company that already has the contract. In this case, there is no incumbent. Next to that would be the current contract number. Well, this is a new requirement. This is a new acquisition. There is no contract number. Then next to that would be current contract expiration date. Obviously, there is no expiration date, but if this were a current contract, like the contract below, there would be a current contract expiration date. And then you have the place of performance. Where is this activity, requirement, acquisition going to take place? They tell you the city and the state. Now, if you go a little bit more to the right, you can't see it on this screen, but you will get a link to the actual forecast so you can look at the full forecast report on your own. You can see all of the current activities, all of the activities that are coming up before they're put out in solicitation mode. And to the right, even though you can't see it, there is a federal buyer email address, name, and or telephone number. You have the right to contact them and ask them questions about any upcoming opportunity that you see on this forecast report. That's exactly what it's for. I love forecast reports. They're like golden nuggets because you can get prepared and you don't have to feel like you're constantly chasing opportunities. You're going to know before they get out to the rest of the public. And then how do you find these opportunities? Just like I showed you with the Department of Justice, you're going to find them the same way. You're going to go to fbo.gov. You're going to click on 30 days. Don't put place of performance because you can see the place of performance in the report unless you're looking for a specific place of performance. Make sure you put total small business, make sure you put pre-solicitation, and then make sure under agency you start typing Department of Energy. And for the Department of Energy, I would not try to nail it down to any specific department or under the Department of Energy just yet until you become familiar with how things are posted. If you want to put some key codes, go ahead. But I would leave it blank at first just to see what everything looks like. And then you hit search. Also, the Department of Energy happens to be one of those agencies that I know for a fact. They put things not just on fbo.gov, but they also put it on FedConnect. So make sure that when you are setting up your accounts in fbo.gov and come over to FedConnect and do exactly the same thing so that you will not miss any opportunities. Okay? But that's basically it for the Department of Energy. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. And let me know if you have any questions about the Department of Energy. Once you get started, you may have some questions that you can't easily find the answer to. And that's what I'm here for. Thank you for joining me today. Please leave me your comments and please subscribe and let me know what industry you'd like to know more about or what agency you'd like to know more about.